Well now, sometimes when you've lived long enough, you learn how to read the signs before the storm hits. And for many Americans watching this unfold, especially those who've seen decades of headlines come and go, this situation feels familiar. The warning signs were there. The scrambling, the quiet moves behind the curtain, the shifting of money, the sudden urgency. This wasn't random. This was preparation. Before the federal raids. Before the lawsuits exploded across television screens. Before the media frenzy consumed every corner of the internet. There were moves being made, careful, deliberate financial maneuvers that now look less like coincidence and more like strategy. And at the center of it, not just Sean Diddy Combs, but his mother, Janice. Now, for many people in their golden years watching this story, family loyalty means something sacred. You protect your child. You stand beside your child. You defend your bloodline. That instinct never leaves a parent, no matter how old their child becomes. But when loyalty crosses into financial shielding, when contracts are written in ways that raise eyebrows, that's when things begin to look different. According to reports that surfaced publicly, there was a paid appearance at a Miami nightclub during Formula One race week in 2023. On the surface, nothing unusual. Celebrities attend events. They collect appearance fees. It's common practice. But 3 days before the event, something changed. The contract was revised. Aggressively revised. The demand? $100,000. Not wired. Not transferred through typical corporate channels. Not processed through standard entertainment accounting systems. Cash. Liquid cash. 2 installments. Paid directly, following written instructions. Not to Diddy's primary business entity, but to a company associated with Janice Combs. For many seasoned Americans who've handled finances, businesses, inheritances, or estates over the decades, that detail stands out. Cash payments of that size, demanded last minute, directed to a parent's entity rather than the celebrity's established corporate structure. That raises flags. And this was not happening in a vacuum. At that very time, civil tensions were building behind the scenes. Legal clouds were forming. The pressure was mounting quietly, long before the public ever saw the first lawsuit headline flash across their televisions. 6 months later, a major lawsuit would emerge. Less than a year later, federal agents would raid properties. Looking back now, those cash demands feel less like coincidence and more like anticipation. As if someone knew the tide was turning. As if someone understood that liquidity, real, physical, accessible cash, might soon matter more than reported net worth. Because here's something people over 65 understand deeply. Paper wealth can vanish quickly. Assets can be frozen. Accounts can be monitored. Corporate structures can be seized. But liquid cash? That's immediate control. And that is what makes this situation feel calculated. This wasn't about one nightclub appearance. This was about positioning. About moving resources. About insulating. The optics alone are powerful. A mother's company receiving 6-figure cash payments shortly before legal earthquakes begin shaking the foundation of her son's empire. Now, no court has declared this criminal. No judge has issued a ruling saying this specific action was illegal. But perception matters. And perception right now feels heavy. Because when homes were later raided in March 2024, investigators were already circling. By then, the narrative had shifted from celebrity gossip to something far more serious. And older viewers, people who remember other high-profile scandals across decades, know this pattern. First comes the denial, then the scrambling, then the restructuring of finances, then the intervention of outside management. Which brings us to the next layer of this unfolding drama. TriStar. Reports indicate that financial control has shifted significantly. That oversight of assets is no longer resting solely within family hands. That structured financial management has taken a stronger hold. And when that happens, it often means one thing. Internal trust has been replaced by external control. For a family that once operated as a tight unit, that shift speaks volumes. There are even reports suggesting that routine expenses for the children now require formal invoicing. Reimbursement approvals. Delays. Rejections. For someone who once projected an image of limitless wealth and influence, that is a dramatic pivot. For older Americans watching, this may feel less like gossip and more like a cautionary tale. Because many have lived long enough to see fortunes rise and fall. To watch powerful men assume their influence made them untouchable. To watch families scramble when the system closes in. And through it all, one image keeps resurfacing. Janice Combs at the center of financial documents. At the center of transactions. at the center of protection efforts, not portrayed as fragile, not portrayed as unaware, but positioned as a financial conduit, a shield, and perhaps in her own mind, a mother doing what mothers do, protecting her son from a coming storm. But storms this large rarely spare anyone standing too close. There is something profoundly emotional about watching a family attempt to outmaneuver consequences, especially for viewers who have spent a lifetime teaching their children about accountability, responsibility, integrity. Many older Americans built their lives on the principle that actions carry weight. That success means little without character. That money cannot erase harm. And when reports suggest that financial planning may have been structured around anticipating legal collapse, it strikes a deeper chord. It feels premeditated. It feels urgent. It feels like someone saw the wave building on the horizon and began stacking sandbags behind the scenes. But here's the truth seasoned viewers understand better than anyone. When the tide comes in, it doesn't ask who you are. It doesn't care about contracts written 3 days before an event. It doesn't care whose name is on the account. It doesn't care how many companies you route funds through. If the storm is strong enough, it reaches everything. And now, in 2025, we're seeing the aftermath of that storm. Financial control shifted. Public reputation shattered. Legal proceedings ongoing. A mother once positioned as protector now standing in the glare of scrutiny. This isn't just celebrity news anymore. For many watching, this feels like a morality play unfolding in real time. A reminder that power can create the illusion of safety. That wealth can create the illusion of control. But accountability has a way of arriving, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. And the emotional weight of that is heavy, especially for an audience that has spent a lifetime believing in consequence, in right and wrong, in the idea that no one stands above the law. This story isn't finished. Not legally, not financially, not morally. But part 1 reveals something powerful already. Long before the headlines, there were moves being made. Quietly, strategically, urgently. And for those watching with decades of wisdom behind their eyes, the message feels clear. When someone begins demanding cash at the last minute, when money shifts to family-controlled entities, when financial oversight suddenly changes hands, it usually means the clock was already ticking. There is something deeply unsettling about watching power slowly slip through someone's fingers. For decades, Diddy Combs projected control. Control over his empire. Control over the narrative. Control over rooms, industries, artists, and influence. To many Americans who watched his rise through the 1990s and 2000s, he represented ambition, hustle, and the belief that reinvention could carry you through anything. But life has a way of humbling even the most powerful figures. And when financial control begins to move out of your hands, that humbling becomes very real. Reports now suggest that a firm called TriStar stepped in to oversee major financial matters connected to Diddy's estate. This isn't a small shift. This isn't a routine accounting adjustment. When outside management firms gain authority over assets, it often signals serious restructuring. For older viewers who have managed estates, trusts, or businesses in their lifetime, this detail speaks volumes. Financial control is deeply personal. It represents autonomy. It represents power. When that control transitions to structured oversight, it means decisions are no longer made casually or emotionally. They are reviewed, evaluated, documented, and perhaps most striking are the reports that even routine expenses for family members now require formal invoicing. Imagine that shift, from private jets and unlimited corporate accounts to reimbursement emails, from signing checks at will to waiting for approval. That kind of transition doesn't just affect finances. It affects pride. For someone who built an empire on image and dominance, having outside professionals manage every dollar is a symbolic reversal. For mothers and fathers watching this story unfold, especially those in their later years, this dynamic hits differently. Because many of them have spent decades teaching their children about responsibility, savings, and consequences. They know that no matter how wealthy someone becomes, poor decisions can unravel even the largest fortune. And the emotional weight of watching a family try to shield itself from collapse feels heavy. Janice Combs was positioned, according to reports, as a financial safeguard. Funds routed through her, accounts associated with her, contracts directing cash payments toward entities tied to her. For some, that looks strategic. For others, it looks desperate. And desperation is something seasoned Americans recognize quickly. When the legal pressure intensified, when lawsuits surfaced publicly, when federal raids took place, the narrative shifted from speculation to seriousness. This was no longer entertainment gossip. This was accountability. The raids in March 2024 sent shockwaves through public perception. Images of federal agents at luxury properties carry a powerful message. They suggest that investigations have moved beyond rumor. And once federal authorities step in, financial maneuvering becomes far more complicated. Because it is one thing to rearrange assets when you anticipate trouble. It is another thing entirely when the system itself begins looking closely at every transaction. Older audiences remember other public figures who tried similar tactics. Moving funds, restructuring ownership, leaning on trusted family members to hold assets. Sometimes it worked temporarily. Sometimes it delayed the inevitable. But in many cases, oversight catches up. And this is where the emotional complexity deepens. A mother standing by her son. A family attempting to preserve what they can. Children caught in the middle of legal storms they didn't create. And a public watching with mixed emotions, some angry, some disappointed, some simply saddened. For many viewers over 65, this isn't about celebrity anymore. It's about values. It's about whether wealth should shield someone from consequences. It's about whether loyalty should override accountability. It's about the discomfort of watching a family operate in protection mode rather than reflection mode. Because when financial documents begin surfacing in media reports, it suggests that private decisions are now part of the public record. And that exposure changes everything. No longer can transactions remain quiet. No longer can last-minute contract demands avoid scrutiny. Once leaked to major outlets, those details become part of the historical timeline. The optics of demanding $100,000 in cash 3 days before an event directed to a parent's company. That image lingers. Even if no court has ruled that specific act illegal, the perception remains powerful. And perception shapes legacy. For decades, Diddy cultivated an image of dominance, sophistication, and financial brilliance. But now the conversation has shifted toward asset protection, legal defense, and financial oversight. That is not the legacy he built. That is the legacy unfolding. And then comes another emotional layer, public commentary from peers. When figures like Kim Burrell publicly speak about forgiveness for both Diddy and R. Kelly, it stirs strong emotions. Forgiveness is a sacred concept, especially for many Americans over 65 who grew up rooted in faith communities. They understand grace. They understand redemption. They understand compassion. But they also understand justice. And that tension between forgiveness and accountability is deeply personal. Saying we must forgive while legal cases remain active can feel premature to many viewers. It can feel dismissive of alleged victims. It can feel like minimizing harm before full truth emerges. And for an older audience that has seen decades of social movements centered on protecting the vulnerable, that suggestion can land painfully. Because forgiveness, in many faith traditions, follows acknowledgement. It follows repentance. It follows responsibility. Without those elements, calls for forgiveness can sound like erasure. And that is why public reactions have been so strong. People are not just responding to celebrity headlines. They are responding to what this moment represents culturally. A powerful man facing serious allegations. A family attempting to manage financial fallout. Public figures urging compassion before legal processes conclude. And a society wrestling with the balance between grace and consequence. For older Americans, this moment feels reflective. It brings back memories of past scandals, of high-profile trials, of public apologies that felt hollow, of fortunes that dissolved under scrutiny. And perhaps most of all, it reinforces a timeless lesson. No empire is immune to collapse when integrity is questioned. Financial strategy can delay discomfort. Cash reserves can soften immediate blows. Corporate restructuring can create temporary stability. But none of those tools erase public reckoning. And that is where this story stands now, in the space between preparation and consequence. The financial chess moves were made. The contracts were written. The cash was collected. The oversight was shifted. But the broader storm has not passed. For viewers who have lived through wars, recessions, political upheavals, and cultural revolutions, this story may not shock them. It may simply confirm something they already know. Character matters more than cash. Legacy matters more than luxury. And when accountability comes, it rarely knocks quietly. It arrives with headlines, with audits, with restructuring, with federal presence, with outside firms reviewing every transaction. and with a public watching closely. The emotional core of this situation isn't about nightclub appearances or contract language. It's about watching the illusion of invincibility fade. It's about seeing financial power become supervised. It's about a mother's loyalty colliding with national scrutiny. And for many older viewers, it serves as a reminder of something they've believed for decades. Truth has a way of surfacing. Even when it takes time, there comes a moment in every long life when you realize that reputation is fragile. You can spend 40 years building a name, a brand, an image. You can collect awards, wealth, influence, and applause. But once doubt enters the room, once serious allegations begin stacking up, the foundation starts to shake. And for many Americans over 65 watching this unfold, that's the part that feels most painful. Not the headlines, not the social media debates, but the collapse of legacy. Because legacy is supposed to be what remains when the music stops. For decades, Sean Diddy Combs was more than a music executive. He was part of American culture. He represented ambition in the 1990s. He symbolized success in hip-hop's golden era. He appeared at award shows, charity events, business conferences. He built brands that stretched far beyond music. Older viewers remember that rise clearly. They saw him during the MTV generation. They saw the suits, the champagne, the polished interviews. He wasn't presented as reckless. He was presented as strategic. Now, that carefully crafted image is facing something far heavier than gossip. It's facing moral examination. And that's where this story becomes deeply emotional. Because when allegations involve harm, when lawsuits describe misconduct, the conversation changes entirely. It's no longer about money or contracts. It becomes about right and wrong. For an audience that has lived through civil rights movements, women's liberation, cultural reform, and decades of social progress, this hits differently. Many older Americans have fought for a world where abuse is taken seriously, where victims are heard, where powerful men are not automatically protected by their status. So when public figures suggest quick forgiveness before legal processes conclude, it doesn't sit comfortably. Forgiveness is sacred. It is powerful. It is part of many people's faith journeys. But forgiveness without accountability feels incomplete. That tension is now part of this national conversation. When Kim Burrell publicly stated that she still considers Diddy and R. Kelly her brothers and expressed a desire for forgiveness, it triggered strong reactions. Not because compassion is wrong, but because timing matters. For older Americans who were raised to believe that repentance comes before restoration, those statements feel premature. And that emotional reaction is not about anger. It's about values. It's about believing that harm must be acknowledged before healing can begin. It's about understanding that loyalty should not blind us to truth. Many people over 65 have seen this dynamic before. A powerful figure falls. Supporters circle the wagons. Religious language is invoked. Appeals to mercy are made. Meanwhile, alleged victims are still waiting for justice. That pattern feels familiar, and familiarity can feel exhausting. But perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of this entire situation is the impact on family, particularly the children. Children, no matter how grown, often carry the emotional consequences of their parents' decisions. Reports that family expenses now require invoicing through a management firm suggest a dramatic lifestyle shift. Imagine growing up in a world of luxury, then suddenly needing formal approval for routine costs. That transition is not just financial. It's psychological. It signals that stability has changed. And for older viewers who have spent their lives trying to leave something secure for their own children and grandchildren, this is painful to watch. Because many in that generation worked hard, so their families would never experience instability. To see a family once surrounded by abundance, now operating under oversight feels sobering. It reinforces a timeless truth. Wealth does not equal immunity. What's also striking is how quickly public admiration can turn into public scrutiny. In earlier decades, celebrity culture often shielded stars from consequences. Media outlets protected powerful figures. Stories were buried. Reputations were maintained. But today's world is different. Information moves fast. Documents leak. Investigations are broadcast in real time. And public patience for silence has diminished. For older Americans who remember eras when powerful men were rarely challenged, this cultural shift feels significant. It represents change, hard-won change. But change also brings discomfort. Because watching someone fall is never easy, even if accountability is necessary. There is something deeply human about witnessing decline. It forces reflection. It makes people ask themselves uncomfortable questions about power, loyalty, and complicity. And in this situation, the role of Janice Combs remains emotionally complicated. Was she simply a mother trying to protect her son? Was she actively involved in financial maneuvering? Was she fully aware of what was coming? These are questions the legal system will ultimately examine if necessary. But in the court of public opinion, her image has shifted from background figure to central participant. For many older viewers, that shift feels tragic, because mothers are often seen as symbols of nurturing, not financial gatekeepers in crisis management. And yet, loyalty can push people into complicated roles. Family bonds are powerful. They can inspire sacrifice. They can also lead to decisions that look questionable from the outside. This entire situation now feels less like a celebrity scandal and more like a generational lesson. A lesson about the limits of influence. A lesson about the consequences of unchecked power. A lesson about how quickly public admiration can transform into public judgment. And perhaps most importantly, a lesson about legacy. Legacy is not built on contracts. It is not preserved through cash reserves. It is not secured by shifting assets between companies. Legacy rests on integrity. For viewers in their later years, that truth carries weight. They understand that at the end of life, people don't remember how much cash you demanded 3 days before an event. They remember how you treated people. They remember whether you stood for something honorable. And that is why this story feels heavy. Because it represents more than headlines. It represents the rewriting of a legacy in real time. The shift from mogul to defendant. From untouchable to scrutinized. From controller of wealth to subject of oversight. There is sadness in that transformation. There is also inevitability. Because history shows us repeatedly that no one is above examination. The public may argue. Supporters may defend. Critics may condemn. But the legal process will continue its course. And for many Americans watching quietly from their living rooms, especially those who have lived long enough to see countless rises and falls, this feels like another chapter in a familiar story. Power expands. Ego grows. Warnings are ignored. And eventually, accountability arrives. It may not arrive when we expect. It may not arrive in the form we anticipate. But it arrives. And when it does, the illusion of permanence fades. That is where this story stands now, in the uncomfortable space between accusation and resolution. In that space, emotions run high. Loyalty clashes with morality. Faith collides with justice. And legacy hangs in the balance. There is a quiet moment that comes in every public downfall. It's the moment after the noise. After the headlines. After the flashing cameras. After the debates and the defenses and the emotional reactions. It's the moment when a person is left alone with their legacy. For decades, Diddy Combs stood at the center of American entertainment. He shaped music. He built brands. He cultivated an image of control, brilliance, and dominance. He was not just part of culture. He helped define it. But now the applause has faded. And what remains is something far heavier. Accountability. For many Americans over the age of 65, this part of the story feels familiar. You've seen powerful men fall before. Politicians, CEOs, entertainers, athletes, men who believed their status would insulate them, men who believed their influence could outpace consequence. History has a way of humbling that belief. What we are witnessing now is not just a legal battle. It is a transformation of narrative. It is the dismantling of an image that took decades to build. When financial control shifts to outside firms, when assets are reviewed under structured oversight, when family members must submit invoices instead of accessing unlimited resources, it signals something undeniable. The era of unchecked dominance has ended. And that shift is not just financial. It is symbolic. For older viewers who have spent a lifetime understanding the value of discipline, humility, and responsibility, this moment carries a lesson that feels almost timeless. You can accumulate wealth. You can build empires. You can surround yourself with loyal voices. But if the foundation beneath it all is unstable, eventually the structure cracks. And once cracks appear, they are difficult to hide. The involvement of TriStar, reportedly overseeing financial matters, represents more than bookkeeping. It represents supervision. It represents oversight. It represents structure imposed where freedom once existed. That is a dramatic fall for someone who once commanded rooms effortlessly. And while legal proceedings continue and no final verdict has been rendered in ongoing matters, public opinion has already shifted significantly. Reputation once damaged is difficult to restore. For an audience that grew up valuing one's good name above material wealth, that truth feels especially important. Your name is what your children carry. Your name is what your grandchildren inherit. Your name is what survives after the bank accounts close. And right now, that name is being debated in courtrooms, in media reports, and across dinner tables throughout America. There is also something deeply sobering about watching loyalty tested under pressure. Janice Combs stood by her son. Whether out of maternal instinct, financial involvement, or belief in his innocence, she positioned herself close to the storm. And storms do not discriminate. They do not spare those standing nearby. For many older Americans, this part feels tragic, because parents naturally want to protect their children, no matter how old they become. That instinct never fades. But there is a line between support and entanglement. And when financial documents begin surfacing publicly, when contracts are dissected, when cash payments are questioned, that line becomes blurred. This entire situation now feels like a cautionary tale about power and proximity, about how influence can create the illusion of safety, about how wealth can create a sense of invulnerability. But time and truth have a way of dismantling illusions. Then there is the broader cultural impact. For decades, celebrity culture often shielded powerful men from serious scrutiny. Stories were whispered but not investigated. Victims were doubted. Money spoke loudly. Today, that dynamic is changing. Older viewers have witnessed this shift in real time. They have seen movements demanding accountability grow stronger. They have watched public tolerance for silence decrease. And while change can be uncomfortable, it also represents progress. Because accountability, when applied fairly and lawfully, strengthens society. It sends a message that no amount of fame erases responsibility, that no amount of cash negates consequence, that no last-minute contract revision can fully protect someone from the weight of legal examination. As for the future of Diddy's empire, that remains uncertain. Brands may distance themselves. Partnerships may dissolve. Endorsements may evaporate. Financial structures may tighten further. Even if some businesses survive, the image attached to them may never look the same. And that is perhaps the most painful part of this entire chapter. Because legacy is not just about surviving legally. It is about how history remembers you. For Americans in their later years, this story may stir mixed emotions. Some feel anger. Some feel disappointment. Some feel sorrow for alleged victims. Some feel sadness watching a once celebrated figure unravel publicly. All of those emotions can coexist. But beneath all of it lies a deeper truth that many older viewers understand instinctively. Character eventually outweighs charisma. Integrity eventually outweighs image. And truth eventually outweighs strategy. You can move money. You can restructure assets. You can hire the best attorneys and managers available. But you cannot outmaneuver moral reckoning. That reckoning may unfold slowly through courts and investigations. It may take years before full clarity emerges. But the cultural shift has already begun. The conversation is no longer about wealth. It is about accountability. It is about whether power was abused. It is about whether influence shielded behavior that should never have been shielded. And for an audience that has spent decades building families, serving communities, and trying to leave the world slightly better than they found it, this moment reinforces something simple but profound. No one is too big to fall. And no one is beyond scrutiny. As this chapter continues to unfold, there will be more headlines. More documents, more commentary, more reactions. But in the quiet of living rooms across America, in homes where wisdom has been earned over many decades, the lesson feels clear. Build your life on something stronger than fame. Protect your name more fiercely than your fortune. And remember that when the applause fades, only truth remains. This is not just a celebrity story. It is a reminder that power without accountability is fragile. A reminder that loyalty without honesty can become dangerous. And a reminder that legacy is not what you accumulate, it is what you stand for when everything else is stripped away. And in the end, that is the part history remembers.